Hello and welcome back to RageGamingVideos, and of course a new Elden Ring Things You Didn't Know episode. Today we have some interesting lore talks to have, more real-world weapon comparisons, which are some of my favourite things to look at, and other useful tricks for your playthroughs. So welcome back once again, thanks to everyone who gets involved in this series. Let's jump into today's episode. To start today's episode off then, we're taking a look at the Miquella situation because there was some interesting comments in relation to the conversation we had last time looking at Zlofsky's version and picture of the actual body that's in the cocoon. This is what Miquella appears to have become, this skinless, rather gangly and, well yeah, much bigger creature. The Miquella that we know at the statues around the world, as well as in the opening cinematic where we see Mohg actually stealing Miquella away from the original cocoon, has greatly changed. The lore of that character is that it's sort of stuck as a child body, but here in the cocoon we see that it's this much bigger and yeah, almost skinless creature. Moritz Wesner in the comments was talking about Miquella's appearance inside the cocoon, specifically saying that it looks exactly like Morgott after we defeat him at the Elden Throne. The holes in the skin could be scars where the Omen horns once were. In that case, Morgott obviously looks like that for obvious reasons, with the grace finally being granted to him in his last moments. But why is it that Miquella looks the same as this grace-given Omen? Moritz suggests that it probably has something to do with Mohg sharing his bed with him. You know, the Omen sharing the blood, sort of sullying his body or something along those lines. In any case, this current form of Miquella is clearly corrupted and twisted and hasn't gone exactly perfect to plan. I'm sure this isn't what Miquella would look like in a healthy, actual adult form. And I'd also like to comment on it, since it came up a lot in the comments of last time, asking what I meant when I was saying if that is indeed Miquella. While it's true that Mohg suggests this is Miquella, and we go on to tell people that this is Miquella, just because a character in the video game thinks something doesn't mean it's actually true, and From Software are a fan of these sort of twists, especially when it comes to lore when from the perspective of a character. I'm just suggesting that Miquella was a really intelligent character, and maybe he had some shenanigans and tricked Mohg, who knows? But it is more than likely that is Miquella, and hopefully we finally find out what's going on in the DLC, whenever that's announced. Next, we stand here in the wailing dunes behind the castle of Radahn, where we fight the big man himself. The reason we're standing here is for another sort of lore discussion. Don Pete suggested in the comments that he had a theory as to why Malenia would pick a fight with Radahn. This is something that I've actually talked about in this series and lore in general, where I was wondering, why would Malenia pick a fight with Radahn? Radahn holding power and Malenia wanting to take it and maybe use it to give to Miquella is a reasonable way of thinking about it. But Miquella is one who basically ignored all of that infighting, not worried about the Elden Ring and trying to create his own Haligtree and his own source of power. So why would Malenia, the blade of Miquella, involve herself in something Miquella just doesn't? Well, Don Pete thinks it's something to do with Castle Sol. Here, all the way at the back and end of Castle Sol, we have a ghost who looks out into the distance where we know the Haligtree is and says this: "Lord Miquella, forgive me. The sun has not been swallowed, our prayers were lacking. Your comrade remains soulless. I will never set my eyes upon it now, your divine Haligtree." So this is a failure. This whole castle, it was trying to do something. It was trying to cause an eclipse and blot out the sun. This is also where we find the Eclipse Shotel, obviously connected to that. A storied sword and treasure of Castle Sol that depicts an eclipsed sun, drained of colour. In Sol, the sight of an eclipse inspires a dreadful awe, preventing an onlooker from averting his gaze. So Miquella was trying to use this castle and potentially this armament to cause an eclipse and blot out the sun in an attempt to restore a comrade and their soul. We already know Miquella was desperately trying to help Malenia with the whole Curse of Rot, but there is another relative of Miquella that also is in a really bad state. That, of course, being Godwyn behind me, corrupted and twisted and transformed. A body that lives, but with no mind, with no soul. On the Golden Epitaph sword description, we can see this was a sword made to commemorate the death of Godwyn the Golden. Infused with a humble prayer of a young boy, aka Miquella, "Oh brother, Lord brother, please die a true death." So it's reasonable to think that Miquella wanted to help Godwyn not suffer the fate that he has, or maybe end the fate that he's currently experiencing. It seems that Castle Sol and the Eclipse is somehow connected to that in a plan that would somehow allow that. The Eclipse allowing Godwyn to have a true death. But there must have been a reason that the attempt failed. They attempted it and it just didn't work. Well, what if it's because of the celestial situation caused by Radahn holding the stars and more in place? basically making it so an eclipse cannot happen. Maybe that's why Melania went to go defeat and fight Radahn, so that he's no longer holding back the stars, so that that plan can take place, and maybe they can help Godwyn. Quite an interesting theory there, and one that I thought was really cool. Well worth including in the series, so thank you, Don Pete. Let me know what you guys think about that. Moving on, we have a quick tip from Twisted Hadji in the comments, all to do with consuming runes, because this is an incredible tip if true. It's something I've not tried once in Elden Ring. I'm about to find out if it is true, and I really hope it is. So as you know, you'll find these golden runes through your playthrough, and you can consume them and get runes. You can use one individually at a time, and obviously that's inefficient if you're going to use multiple. So if I found that I need, say, 1,200 runes, instead of using one, then one, then one, I'll just choose 3, and then I can get my 1,200 runes. Easy. Great. A simple and obvious feature. But it was Twisted that made the incredible suggestion that, again, I really hope is true, that if you press R3 in, or, the right stick on a controller, or whatever it is on a keyboard, you can have a look at your character. This helps when you're changing outfits and looking at fashion, but apparently this actually prevents the menu from being closed. So I'm going to try and use like a bunch of these, and hopefully it doesn't close the menu. So let's say I need a certain amount, and this is just a little bit too little. So I'm going to have to reopen the menu and try again. But because I have it in this style, oh my god, that's incredible. It keeps the menu open so I can immediately use more. That's such an important and useful tip. I'm currently going through the game with someone who's never played these games before, and I'm constantly watching them do this. This is going to really help me there. I had no idea you could do that, although there is a clear downside. Let's say I try and do it now. At the bottom right, I should be able to see how many runes this is actually going to give me, and it doesn't show me because I've got that menu open. So I still need to actually check how many it gave me, so I'm not sure if that's great. At least if you know how many runes each thing you're actually using gives you, it's fine. But it's true that you can always just go to a merchant and go to those exact items and then sell them that way. You can see how much each individual thing is worth, and then it'll also tell me how much I get, obviously, when I put in a certain number of them. But naturally, out in the open world, there are so many places where you can't fast travel and you need those runes, or there's just not a merchant nearby, so this isn't always available. Next up, we have one from YouTube Voice, which is incredible detail. A really cool spot that I'm really happy to include in the series. It's a tiny little thing that just makes me very satisfied. So I'm wearing the Bloodhound Knight set. This metal armor is worn by the Bloodhound Knights, and those are the knights trained as hunters known to be unshakable trackers. Without the use of language, each knight chose his own master, and once the decision was made, the knight would stay loyal for life. Cool lore, cool characters, and cool armor set. And one of the first you'll fight is here at the Forlorn Hound Everjail. This is where you fight Darrywheel and get that incredible sword. Now you'll know when you fight any of these, which you will find in the open world in various places, that yeah, they fight on all fours and they're spinning around, they're dashing, they're very agile, they're quite unique enemies. When we wear their armor though, we just look like a normal dude wearing their kind of cool armor set. It was YouTube Voice though that brought up the incredible, subtle detail that if we look at the armor plating on the legs, you can see that there's metal plating on the front of my legs to protect me from damage and incoming blows. But when we look lower than that at the shins, something's a bit odd there. In fact, I'm wearing metal plates down there, but they're not protecting my shins at all. If I spin around though, you can see that there they are. The metal plates that are meant to be protecting the front of my leg are actually on the back of my leg. Why is it that they're in the wrong place? They're literally worn backwards. Well, again, if you think about it, the Bloodhound Knights are on all fours when they're fighting you. So of course their back is more likely needing protection, especially those sticking out legs. So they opt to have that armor spin around and be backwards to protect the backside, which is actually more exposed when they fight. It's an incredibly small and very subtle detail, and it's exactly the type of thing I love talking about in this series. The way that the devs and the people that designed this armor and created this concept went to such subtle detail lengths. It's absolutely fantastic. If you know anything like that, then let me know in the comments. And last up for our topics for today's video, I'm excited to have a look at more weapons and some real-world inspirations for them. Firstly, we have Larky Luna, who talks about the Bestial Dagger here having an older Roman equivalent, the Parazonium, which is kind of the same style as a sort of short, very wide and thick dagger. Apparently it's related to gods of virtue, excellence and knowledge, which fits with the lore of the Beast clergymen as a symbol of their intelligence, their virtue, their kind of knowledge of those arts. Referred to as a short sword rather than a dagger given to high-ranking clergymen of Farum Azula, symbolic of intelligence once granted upon their kind. So very similar concepts and origins of the two daggers. I like that comparison. Let me know what you guys think. Whereas our other weapon I want to talk about is a real-life whip made from metal. This sort of sword that is actually usable quite like a whip. And it has basically the same name as the Urumi. In the lore of Elden Ring, this is made by the Night Folk warriors, a whip with a cutting edge, but can also be used as a spear to pierce foes. But a real Urumi is a sword with a flexible whip-like blade made from metal. Its origins come from Indian culture, and it is treated like a steel whip, but requires knowledge of both sword and whip to be able to be used, and apparently it's taught last in Indian martial arts because of that. It's something I've never seen before, but yeah, it looks horrifying to look at. And they basically just slammed that weapon into Elden Ring with its own lore, but it's actually very similar in design and function. A really cool detail, and this is the type of stuff, again, I really like looking at. But there you have it, another episode of things you didn't know in Elden Ring down. As always, if you do have anything you think could be included in this series that hasn't yet been talked about, then let me know. Any follow-ups to the discussion today with the lore are very appreciated, and if we do include anything you suggest or talk about in the comments, I'll of course give you a shout out. But until next time then, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thank you for watching, we'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.